Namaste. Welcome to our lecture on Yoga Anatomy for Yoga Teachers. In the last classes, we have seen how the way a person is going to be standing is going to be affecting into their yoga postures. So as a yoga teacher, we should be knowing some basics about how the human body is functioning. We already know that the human body is composed of three different layers. One is the outer physical body, the second one is the inner energetic body, and then there is going to be the innermost, the causal body. If you look into the physical body, it is the outer covering of the body, the outermost layer. It is made up of this flesh, bones and skin. The yogi first explores what is their physical body, what I am, how I am moving, what is restricting me in my movement. Then the yogi goes inside the energetic body. The outermost body is made up of food. It is maintained by food. It is also going to be destroyed by food. We give a lot of importance to this outer covering. If you remember one survey which says why people come for yoga, they come for keeping them healthy, keeping them fit. They are very much concerned about how they look and how they maintain the shape of the body. Our human body is so sensitive and receptive. The vibrations which is going to be produced on the physical body when we are going to be doing the asanas is very palpable and very tangible. By learning this anatomy and knowing about the physical body, we are going to be decoding many myths about why we could able to do some postures very easily, why we could not, or why we are struggling in some postures. This anatomy is going to be helping us to identify how to teach the postures to the people in front of us in a very safe and effective way. Already we have discussed about what is the preference of the people who is going to be coming us on a yoga class, and also we have discussed about how to spot their learning style. So reading anatomy is helping us to understand our physical body in our own personal practice, and also helps us to give an idea of what is the person in front of us, how do they stand, what style they are doing when they are going to be seated, how is their shoulders, to identify what is their strength and what is their limitations. Especially learning anatomy is going to be helping us very well in dealing with the students who is going to be kinesthetic in nature. We know that Hatha yoga is the movement based activity. What we do on the mat is we move our body into different shapes and forms. During that movement, we are trying to find balance within us. If you understand how this body moves and what makes it not to move, then it is going to be so easy for us to adjust and assist people who is going to be in front of us. Especially when they find difficult to find an exterior shape or form in their body. When students initially see a teacher doing the postures, they are going to be seeing only a form, and the student try to replicate the form what the teacher makes. If their body parts is not going to be having some balance or lacking some movements, they find difficult in getting this exterior shape. A teacher who knows the anatomy will help the student to get into this exterior shape or form in a very safe and effective way. As a yoga practitioner, as a yoga instructor, we should know what are all the different joints, muscles, ligaments and organs inside the body and how they are going to be functioning normally. By understanding this, we are going to be knowing the benefits of proper movement getting into the postures, and also you will be knowing what is going to be causing injury if they are going to be moving improperly, or any movement which is not going to be appropriate helps us to understand that this movement is going to be causing injury. Any movement which is proper and appropriate help us to understand that this movement is going to be very safe and effective. Yoga teachers need to be aware of what constitutes this human body, what is proper movement, what is improper movement, so that they can help students to adjust, to assist, to do various postures. Remember, if a student could not able to get into the posture, if you are going to be teaching a single angle pose and the student is going to be finding or struggling difficult to maintain a 90 degrees of this pose, they are going to be definitely ask you, teacher, why I could not able to do this posture. You have to first understand that single angle pose is something to do with the flexibility of the hamstring and also flexibility of the lumbar spine. If the person is going to be having an excessive flatness into their low back spine, maybe because of long time sitting, or they have not done any physical activities in the last 20-30 years, they are going to be finding struggling into that. So when you have this understanding about the low back spine and the hamstrings, it's so easy for you to communicate with your student to see what is the effective posture for them and what are all the modifications which we can give to that student. By understanding some simple names, locations of certain few muscles and joints, it is going to be so easy for us to understand and to explain the questions what our students are going to be asking to us. By learning this, we can give proper guidance, proper safety, and the adjustment energetic cues to the student. So the student learning experience is going to be very much uplifting. Also, they are not going to be experiencing any pain or injury in their practice, and their body, mind, both are going to be feeling happy, and this student is not going to be leaving you. And if we know that how the body moves, what are all the various movement of different joints, not all the joints are going to be moving in the same way. The elbow can bend only like this, whereas the shoulders can rotate. So you understand this various movement, what causes obstructions and how to remove those obstructions, then it is going to be so easy for us to help our students to get into their postures. Remember, our body is a beautiful garden. We need to know what is where, what it needs, and how much it needs. For a tree, it requires a large amount of water. If it is going to be a small plant, it requires only a small amount of water. We are not going to be pouring a large amount of water to a plant and a small amount of water to the tree. Same way, understanding what are all the movements of a major joint like shoulder and what are all the movements of a minor joint like fingers, and how we are going to be using those movements in an appropriate way into the postures help us to crack all the postures what our students is going to be struggling. Not only that, understanding or learning this anatomy is going to be helping us to understand what we are, what my physicality is. Am I having more strength or more flexibility? Am I having more strength on one side compared to the other side? How is my hips? Is it rotated externally or it is going to be rotated internally, and how I overcome this? What are all the strength which I am going to be having in various areas? What is the strength of my shoulders? What is the strength of my core? What is the strength of my thighs? And how this affects me in doing my postures. Some postures you love to do, you want to stay in the posture for a longer period of time, and in some postures you want to come out as soon as possible. Now we are going to be identifying what are all those poses which we are struggling and what may be the possible reason for our struggle. Third one, how we are going to be overcoming, adding strength or adding flexibility to that particular part so that that pose becomes an enjoying experience for us. We discussed the practice of yoga is a movement based activity. What we do on a mat, we move in different angles and in different planes. Also, in some poses, we are trying to stop the movement. Even when you are doing a breathing exercise, you are going to be altering the movement of the breath. Even when you are going to be closing your eyes and doing a meditation practice, you are stopping the movement of the mind. So yoga is a movement-based activity. In the physical body, if you want to explain what is the movement, we usually tell in terms of planes. The body moves in different planes: forward plane, backward plane, sidewards plane, frontal, anterior, posterior. So there is going to be different planes of the body. We are not going to be detailed going into the different planes of the body, but you understand, you move the body into different planes. In a forward fold, you are going to be moving your body into the frontal plane. And if you look into some poses, you need to twist or turn the body into a transverse plane. Say for example, a twisted triangle pose. It's not only that you are going to be moving forward, you are also going to be moving sidewards. So if you look, every pose is going to be having 3 or 4 actions. Say in a palm tree pose, you are going to be getting your knee flexion, you are going to be getting your hip flexion, and you are going to be having an shoulder extension. If you know what is a tree pose, we add one more movement to that. Remember, we discussed about progression and regression. So on a tree pose, the one pose or one movement which we are adding is the external rotation of the thighs. That's going to be the major difference between a palm tree pose and a tree pose. You can only make the student progress or regress when you understand the movement. Say for example, if there is a guy who is struggling in my class to do a tree pose, and now I identified that it is because of the tightness onto the quadriceps and there is not much of external rotation of the thigh, I easily regress this pose. I say, please do palm tree pose. Tree pose we can do it after we do some external rotation off to the thighs. And if I see someone, another guy who is very flexible and doing a tree pose very easily, now I am going to be adding one more movement, asking this person to move the body into the lateral plane to twist the spine to get into the side tree pose. So understanding this various movement of the body and the joints is going to be helping us to give options for the student. We are going to be progressing or regressing the postures in a very safe and effective way. Like a kid learning to build a castle with the Lego pieces, we are going to be starting from the foundation and then we are going to be doing it gradually. Always approach the poses in the same way. Now, the problem is not just learning the names or learning the movement. We can easily identify what is shoulders, what is elbows, what is wrist. Now we have got some idea about like what is flexion, what is extension, what is internal rotation, what is external rotation. Now we need to apply this on these postures. Say for example, people who do gymming, who wants to strengthen their shoulders are going to be always rotated outwards. There are poses like an eagle pose where you need to interlace your forearms. So this posture requires some internal rotation of the shoulders. And if you see in a class, there is going to be one guy who doesn't have this internal rotation of the shoulders. Instead of interlocking the forearms, we are going to be giving an options to keep the palms like this. We are not going to be giving this option as a permanent thing. This guy, we are going to be making him understand that this shoulders needs some internal rotation. Maybe we are going to be giving something else for him to increase the internal rotation of the shoulders. Then later on, this guy is going to be trying this eagle pose. So remember, it is not understanding or naming the joints or the movements. It is how we are going to be effectively apply this onto our postures. So now let's understand the various movements of the body. We will start with the elbow. Not every joint is going to be moving in all direction. For example, an elbow. The elbow is going to be moving only in one direction, which is flexion and extension. It does not move in any other direction. If you look into the shoulders can move in all the direction. The shoulders can move in all the direction. So the elbow is going to be having only flexion extension. You cannot ask the student to rotate the elbow. There are certain poses which requires the shoulders to be rotated. That is internal rotation of the shoulders. The other movement is external rotation of the shoulders. So understand this. There is going to be internal rotation. There is going to be external rotation of the shoulders. So flexion, extension, internal rotation, external rotation. Let us see into the wrist. If you take the wrist joint, bending the wrist is flexion and this is extension. This is flexion and this is extension. And if you look into the neck, there is going to be flexion of the neck, bending, and there is going to be straightening is extension. There is one more movement which is hyperextension. You move the joint beyond its range of movement is hyperextension. There are people who is going to be practicing gymnastics as a sport from their childhood. We can see them, they have a very good flexibility. We call this hyperextension. They can move their joint beyond the range of motion. It is going to be both advantages and disadvantages. What are all the disadvantages of being hyperextension? That we can discuss on a later chapter. And then if you look into the other movement, we have discussed flexion, extension, internal rotation and external rotation. There is abduction and adduction. When you move your shoulders away like this is abduction. You are abducting something from its place, and there is going to be adduction, which is crossing over, move inwards or adding together. Abduction, moving away, adduction, crossing over or getting it closer to each other. Say in postures, there is going to be needing some flexion. In postures, there is going to be needing some external rotation and also abduction or adduction. Also, we have discussed about certain poses requires strength, certain poses requires flexibility. Example, forward fold pose requires flexibility of your low back spine and also the hamstrings. If you take poses like a plank pose, it requires strength of your shoulders, your core and also your thighs. Yoga is all about balancing. That's the reason why, like some guys who is going to be so strong, they enjoy the postures only which is going to be strength, and it comes like flexibility, they are going to be struggling. There are some people who is going to be having like a very good flexibility, but they are going to be struggling when it comes in poses where it requires strength. So we need to understand that yoga is a balance of both strength and flexibility. We need to teach both strengthening poses and also stretching postures so that we balance the strength and flexibility. So now it is very important for an yoga instructor to need to learn what constitutes the human body and how it is going to be affecting or injured if ignored. This helps us to disappear that kind of asana what the individual in front of you is going to be needing. There are some basic alignment rule every yoga instructor has to be knowing, because wrong alignment is going to be causing injury. People come to the yoga class to get benefits. They don't come to us to get injured. In many of the postures, we should know that the body is going to be keeping in a straight line. And if you are not going to be emphasizing this alignment, chances of injury is going to be more. So it is very important to understand what are all the basic alignment rules in any yoga practice. The major bones of the body. There are more than 206 bones in the human body. For an yoga instructor, we don't need to name all these bones, because that's not going to be serve us any purpose, but understanding what are all the major bones in the body. Say for example, collarbone. This is so important in yoga. This collarbone is going to be deciding whether you have a very good internal rotation or external rotation. In many of the poses, we need to know that this bone, which is going to be connecting here to the chest bone, which is also called the sternum, to be unlocked. Any tightness into this joint is going to be moving the shoulders inwards, and this person suffers from breathing, which is going to be affecting the energy into the person. So understanding what is the bones which is very much essential for us. Say for example, the lumbosacral bone, which is going to be onto the lower back. This is also going to be very much important to understand, because this decides how much the person is going to be bending forward and how much the person is going to be bending backward. Knowing these names of these bones is going to be so easy task, because we are going to be picking up only the major bones. We will be learning the names of the bones when we are going to be learning the joints. We are going to be looking only into 8 joints. Say for example, when we are going to be looking into the shoulder joint, there is going to be 3 bones which is going to be associated with the shoulder joint. One is the long bone, which is going to be called as humerus. There is going to be flat bone onto the back, which we call it as like shoulder blades or scapula, and there is going to be this collarbone, or going to be called as the clavicle. So we will learn the names of the bones when we discuss about the joints. And remember, we are going to be discussing only about 8 joints throughout this course. Understanding how the joint functions and what constitutes the joint is going to be helping you to crack down any postures and also to help the person in front of you. And we know that yoga is a movement based activity. The only thing what you move in our body is our joints. So it is the joints which is moving makes the bones and muscles and even the skin to move. So when we understand these joints, we are going to be seeing like different types of joints. There is freely movable joint, there is non-movable joint, there is a joint which is going to be moving only in one direction, there is a joint which moves in 2 directions, and there is a joint which can move in multiple directions. So some poses requires the shoulder joint to be rotated, but our student doesn't know the difference between that this is a single moving joint and this is a multiple moving joint. Sometimes they try to rotate their elbows, which is going to be causing any pain or injury to them. So understanding this joint is going to be helping us to understand how we can do this posture in a very safe and effective way. There is going to be a joint which is a hinge joint. There is going to be a joint which is a ball and socket joint. The hinge joint can move only in one direction, whereas the ball and socket joint can move in multiple directions, so that we are going to be cracking down the postures very easily. When we are going to be combining this, our understanding about the joints, with what is the person in front of you, their strength, their flexibility, then their yoga experiences is going to be very safe, effective, and they are going to be achieving the results very quickly. Major muscles of the body. This is going to be one of the toughest topic because there is going to be a lot of muscles inside the body. But as we are going to be learning these 8 major joints, we are also going to be learning what are all the muscles which are going to be associated with these joints. Say example, when we read the shoulders, we are going to be learning about the biceps, the triceps, and the 4 muscles which is going to be onto your shoulder blade, which is called as rotator cuff. You don't need to worry much about like how I am going to be learning into the muscles. As we start doing the postures, we are going to be feeling the muscles. You're going to be feeling the core. You're going to be feeling the rotator cuff muscle. You're going to be feeling the quadriceps, which is on the front of the thigh. You're going to be feeling the hamstrings, which is going to be on the back of the thigh. We will learn all the muscles by doing the postures and simply feeling it. When you feel it and learn, it will not go out from your mind. The structure, function, and composition of the spine. The spine is going to be having a very important major role in our yoga practice. All the higher practices of yoga. When I say higher practices of yoga, your concentration, your focus, your meditation, understanding the energy is going to be revolving around the spine. In the traditional yoga, they gave a lot of importance for the spinal movements. In the modern yoga, the modern yogis is going to be giving a lot of importance for the movements of the axial skeleton, which is arms and legs. They invent new postures involving their hands and arms, like handstand, rotating the legs when they are going to be doing on a headstand. From a 3-legged dog, you are going to be lifting one leg up and doing a flip. So the contemporary yoga has tried to find out like what they can do with their outer body. This is called as the appendicular skeleton. But the true yoga or the traditional yoga is for the axial skeleton. It is for the spine, it is for the brain. So we need to understand what constitutes with the spine. And if you could look on people, when they are going to be doing a forward fold, not everyone is going to be bending from their low back. There are going to be people who has very flexible mid spine. There are people who has a tight neck, upper spine. There are going to be people who has a tight lower back spine. So when you understand how the spine moves and what are all the modifications which we can give for the spine, then it is going to be easy for us, for people to do in the postures. Often people come to me saying that they struggle touching to their toes and then they think it's going to be tightness onto the back of the thigh, and whereas we found out that it is going to be the low back spine which is going to be causing this difficulty. We simply ask them, do a single angle pose. So when they do a single angle pose, with the support of the wall, with the support of the strap, and sometimes we assist them to get into the stretch, it becomes so easy for them to go and touch down to the toes. So it is very important for us to understand what constitutes the spine, how does the spine moves, and what we can do if there is going to be any obstructions in the spine. So we discussed about the muscles. I told we will understand the muscles better when we are going to be experiencing that. So what we will do on our next practical class is that we are going to be having a class focused on how we are going to be feeling those muscles when they are in action. Once we have understood all those anatomical terminologies, the different movement, what is safe movement and what is unsafe movement, this gives us a thorough understanding of how the body moves. We call this asanas as biomechanics. Mechanics is movement, bio is living. So in the living body, you are going to be understanding this. Say for example, understanding that elbow is a hinge joint and shoulder is going to be the ball and socket joint. When you have this understanding, you ask to some people to do interlocking their fingers. So when they want to interlocking their fingers by lifting their elbow up and then holding and moving the other arm towards the back, and if this person tries to tilt or rotate their elbow, we are going to be preventing them from doing this. We simply say to them like it is rotation of the shoulders. Don't try to rotate their elbows. So this is going to be helping us to do the safe and effective practice. Also, understanding this anatomy is going to be taking a long time. As a yoga instructor, what we need to know is some basic anatomy which is focused on the safe practice. So don't bother about the different joints, or don't bother about how I am going to be naming these muscles or joints or bones. This will come in an easy way. We have designed this curriculum in the most easiest way so that you can understand all these things by experiencing. Remember, our motto is, if you are going to be the witness of your own transformation, you easily get convinced and you can easily pass it to others. So this information, what you are going to be learning, is going to be making a huge difference in your perception about this yoga practice. And if you understand what are all the muscles in actions and what is the difference between the high lunge pose and the low lunge pose, you are going to be walking out with huge information which is going to be helping you to understand the person who is going to be in front of you in a very effective way. Remember, you are going to be learning this anatomy only in the context of yoga. When they teach anatomy in the medical school, they are going to be teaching it for 18 months. We have very short time, only 200 hours. We are going to be grabbing the information as much as we can when we do the postures. And this can be learned very well when you are experiencing it, when you are going to be understanding it. So we will be not learning all the anatomy in one single day, and when you are going to be teaching, definitely students is going to be asking you many doubts regarding why they could not able to do the postures. Feel free to tell them, I don't know, but remember, you go back and then you are going to be getting into the reference, and don't forget to get back to the student to clear their doubts. So the most doubt which I am going to be experiencing in my these last many years of experience as a yoga instructor is student coming and asking me why I could not able to keep my spine straight on a plank pose, why I could not able to get my hip down on a pigeon pose. So people are going to be asking you a lot of doubts because they see the person next to them and then they compare themselves to that person. They could able to see that the other person is going to be very good in their form or shape, and they are going to be struggling with the forms or shape. So be prepared when you are going to be teaching. Even with a single angle pose, there are going to be people asking me why I am putting all my weight onto my toes, why my weight is not shifting to the heels, why I am struggling with these postures. So you need to know the anatomy of the body if you want to answer these questions. Not just answering these questions, you are also going to be helping them to do the postures in ease. Also, understanding this anatomy is going to be helping us to create different sequences. Say for example, if I am going to be having a lot of guys who is going to be beginners and then they are struggling to do the forward bend, I am going to be designing a 60 minutes class only on hip flexion and the hamstring flexibility. If I am going to be having a student who is going to be very good into their shoulders and then they have a very good core strength, I am going to be designing a sequence only on doing arm balances and using the strength of the shoulders as an advantage for the postures. If I am going to be having a lot of people who is going to be having a low back pain, probably I am going to be designing a sequence which is going to be helping them to reduce the tension or stress onto the low back. But This requires a lot of time and more understanding about the postures. So, learning the anatomy is going to be very much beneficial for you on your personal practice and also for your students to help them achieve their postures in a very safe and effective way. And this process is going to be requiring a lot of time. We cannot get all the knowledge simply by reading or listening any lectures. We are going to be learning this very easily if we experience this on our body. Our next classes will be focused on identifying some of the muscles in the body. That's all for today. Thanks for listening to me. If you have any doubts, you can call me, you can text me, or write an email to me. Namaste.